Hi everyone, I just thought that I'd post up a little tutorial to show you how to do something which I think is pretty cool with ArtMatic Voyager. Over the last few days I've just been kind of trying to work out some ways that we could use Voyager to do VR stuff. And it turns out it's not really that difficult. So I'm going to show you how to go about doing that. Now, there are a couple of things you need to know first of all before you start doing VR. If you've never done it before, you'll need to get some kind of viewer. And so let's just have a look here. The easiest way to do this is to get something like Google Cardboard. Now, cardboard's, aside from anything, is cheap. You can even make it yourself if you want to go and try and source the lenses and stuff. But it's a very, very simple thing. The idea is actually supported by a lot of different people. So if you click on the Get a Viewer link on the Google Cardboard site, it'll take you to a place where you can actually buy all kinds of different viewers. So you've got a big choice of things that you can do there if you're really into it. There's some really neat things like this aluminium one and various things. But also, as I said, you can make one yourself if you can be bothered. If you want to do it for ultra cheap, it's not very expensive anyway. If you get one of the cardboard ones, they're actually quite cheap. So you'll need that because for what we're going to do, there's really no other way to experience it. And you'll obviously need a phone. And the suggested phones are kind of the ones with the so-called retina screens in them. Is you want a high resolution screen. You really can't do this on a phone that doesn't have a high resolution screen. The resolution's just not good enough. So if you've got sort of like anything above about an iPhone 5 or one of the recent Samsungs or something like that, they're all pretty good for doing this. Um, so that's what you kind of need for your basic environment. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got Voyager open and I have a file in here. I'm going to show you how to go about. Oh, the other thing I should tell you too is the other thing you need is an app to actually play on your phone. And the app that I'm using, it needs to be something that will actually load files in the correct format and allow you to display them in the correct format. Now this is a little freebie. This one, this is from the iTunes store, and it's just called Mobile VR Station. It does everything you need to do, and it's got some really kind of neat little under the hood things as well. So I'd recommend this one. I'm doing this on an iPhone 6, so it's pretty straightforward how to do all that kind of stuff. So that's what you need. You need this, and you need the Google Cardboard, some kind of Google Cardboard viewer. I bought a viewer from Kmart. It was just some little toy that is made by Viewmaster, and it cost me a little bit more than $20. So if you've got a phone and a viewer, the viewer costs you $20. You're really into making VR stuff for that much money because nothing else costs you anything. Okay, so let's just have a look in Voyager. Now I've loaded up one of the fractal systems that I made a little while ago. This is a whole lot of little pipey things. Seems like it should be a really good thing for a VR experience. Just to go over what you get if you do VR. It's a really interesting phenomenon because you basically put on the little goggles, you're looking at your phone, you've got a stereoscopic image, and when you move your head around, when you look in different directions, you will actually be able to look around the environment that the VR is providing for you. It's very cool. If you've never done it before, it's quite astonishing because you kind of feel, wow, I'm in the middle of this thing. It's really, really quite cool. It's particularly good with stereoscopic images. Some people are doing kind of panoramic VR, which when they call VR, it's really just a panorama. It's a mono flat panorama that you can look around inside. Now that's cool enough in itself, but if you can make stereoscopic images, that is true binocular images, you've got a really, really cool little toy. I mean, it really is fantastic. And Voyager is uniquely set up to exploit this kind of thing because of the method that it uses to model its landscapes and its fractals and things. It's a procedurally generated landscape, which means that the landscape, it doesn't have to be specifically modeled to have different things in it. It's just all there once you've set up the landscape. So you'll know this if you've used Voyager. Tool around in here and you're basically looking 360 degrees inside a landscape that already exists. So this is really cool. You've got your existing three-dimensional landscape basically. So the only thing you need to be able to do is to generate the correct format to make a proper VR experience. And it turns out This is really easy inside of Voyager. Normally, when you actually make render a still, as you know, you'll either hit render pick to file, or you'll use one of the other menu commands or something to do that. But you'll just get a standard JPEG mono image. Voyager allows you, however, to create a stereoscopic pair. Now, stereoscopic pair is, if you don't know, is an image that's rendered for the left eye and an image that's rendered for the right eye, because you see a slightly different angle from each eye. And to get true stereoscopic imaging, you really do need to have those two images and somehow get them one to one eye and the other to the other eye. And this is what the Google Cardboard viewer will do. But this is just a standard stereo view. And to invoke the dialog that gives you the option to do that, you put your mouse over the render picture file and you hold down the option key, and you'll get, as you see over here, a binocular picked render, which means you'll get two images, and it'll bring up a different dialog to the one you normally see. Now, this is going to give you a left eye and a right eye render. They'll be rendered as two separate image files, so they have to actually be rendered independent of one another. Normally speaking, if you were doing standard stereoscopy, you'd actually just kind of have a squarish image, because most viewers respond better to that sort of thing. But we're talking about doing something in VR in the format that allows us to look around the full 360 degree of our environment. So we have to adopt a different format, and the recommended format is basically a 2:1 ratio, screen ratio. Now, I've settled on 2000 pixels by 1000 pixels because it seems to give me a very good result. You could probably reduce that somewhat. I'm not sure exactly what the pixel limitations are on the phone, but this is reasonably quick to generate, and it gives you two fairly high quality images. So on anything except extremely complicated Voyager landscapes, it'll only take you a few minutes to render this. So you need to set your ratio 2000 to 1000, or 2:1. There are a few other things that you'll see in this dialog. You have the convergence distance, which is the distance at which your eyes will converge, and the relief gain, which gives you the amount of gain of the stereoscopy. Now, this will depend, this is a very critical kind of function, the relief gain, but it will depend heavily on what kind of scene you've got. In most cases, and I would suggest that when you start out with this process, you just pick one of the standard landscapes from the library, because this will come up as a default, and it will be around about 2, I think, from memory. It kind of simulates what would happen if you were standing in an environment, like a real environment, and looking around. Because I'm inside a fractal and the dimensions are somewhat changed from reality, I have to actually set the relief gain very, very low. It's in fact as low as it will go. Otherwise, I get a very strange problem, which is a little technical to go into, but it just means the stereoscopy won't be rendered correctly. But you'll probably, if you do a landscape, the rule of thumb will probably be stick it around 2.0 in this data field. Now, as for the distance of convergence, this depends on a lot of factors. I mean, really, it's something you need to kind of muck around with. When you start out doing this, I just leave it at the default. If you're in a standard Voyager landscape and you leave it at the default, you're going to get something that's pretty reasonable. Okay, so once you've got that setting done and you've nominated your screen ratio, you can hit a preview, and this will give you a preview of the file that you're looking at. And it will do two separate ones, as I said, one from the left eye, one from the right eye. This is what we're going to end up with. It's just a preview image to show you the screen ratio and what you're going to get. So that's your two separate images. And if you go ahead and click the tick box, it will render them. But in this particular case, we're only seeing, what we would get here is a standard piece of stereoscopy, and we don't want that for VR. What we need to do for VR is follow a slightly different procedure. And that is to actually take our zoom level to its maximum. We want to go out as far as we can go. And in the way that Voyager works, the zoom level on its kind of far left setting will give you a zoom level of 0, which basically means the camera is looking at 360 degrees. You're looking full 360 degrees. That side of the image will join with that side of the image. And that's what we want to make a simulated VR environment. We actually need to be able to turn around 360 degrees. So we need to set the zoom setting right out to the very far left for this to work. So let's just bring up our dialog again, and we'll do a preview, and you will now see that what happens is that the two images are on the very far zoom, but they'll still be binocular images. We still have a left eye and a right eye, and this is really necessary for our VR, as I said. Okay, so what we would then do is, I should also point out here too, there are restrictions in the way that Voyager works, so you don't get true full spherical 360 degree VR, unfortunately. And what I mean by that is that you will be able to turn around full 360 degrees and see everything. You'll even be able to look up and down. But if you look completely up, so like right at the vertex of your 360 degree sphere, Voyager doesn't really handle the way the sphere is joined properly, so you won't get full spherical 3D. And the same thing will happen if you look straight down. You'll see a seam at the bottom. That's unfortunate, but there are kind of mathematical reasons which make rendering of such a landscape actually quite difficult in Voyager. So you do have to wear that problem. Generally speaking, most people will not see that. If you look right up, of course you're going to see it, but most people are not aware of that. And in any case, just for the fun of doing this kind of thing, it's a minor thing to have to put up with, I think. So what we would then go ahead now and do, because we've set our ratio, we've got our two views, we've got everything we need, we just hit render. And what would then happen is that Voyager would render the left view, and then which would make one file, and then it would render the right view, which would make another file. I won't do that now because I've already rendered these two views so that we can save some time. So all we need now to do, I'll just close that, because it's going to be two images, we now need to actually combine the two images. Now I use an application called Affinity Pro. I like this. It's kind of a Photoshop equivalent, but it's way cheaper, and it does pretty much anything I need it to do. So I'm happy to use this. So now I just need to navigate and find our tutorial. There we go. Okay, so we've got these two images which I'm now going to load, and they're called 1 and 2. Now you've got to remember 1 and 2 because this is going to be kind of critical. So this is going to load. Now in Affinity, you'll see that the names of the images are up here. There are two separate images. They're in two separate windows at the moment. But what we need to do is we need to join them left to right. And the image called number 1 needs to be the left view, and the image called number 2 needs to be the right-hand view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize my canvas here, and I do this to put this one on the left hand side. So you'll see here this is 2000 by 1000 pixels, which you'll remember is what we rendered at. I don't want to constrain it. I actually really need it to be 4000 pixels wide. So I'll resize the canvas, and you'll notice that now the image is on the left and I've got space on the other side for the other image. So we'll just go to the other image and I'll copy that, and we'll go back and we'll paste it, and pasted it entirely on top of the other one, so that's no good. So we just need to move it to the right here. So you need to generate an image which is like this size, and try not to have a seam in it. So you don't want to see any white in it at all. You don't want a white pixel on the left side in between the two of them either. Now this is pretty critical because if you don't get this right, you will get a little line in your VR, which you really don't want to have. Okay, so now you can see there's a left-hand image and a right-hand image here, and this is exactly the format we need. We have a 2000 by 1000 pixel square image on the left eye and the same on the right eye, which makes 4000 by 1000 pixel viewing environment. Now I just need to save this, so we'll export this out from Affinity, and we'll just make it a JPEG. We'll just stick it in there. Let's call it combined or something. Now that has saved that as one single image. I'll just go and check that out in our Tute. And this is our image here. That's the image that we now have. Now the next step of what we need to do here is to get this into our VR environment, and that's when we use the little application that I spoke of earlier. Now, the way to do that depends on the kind of device that you have. Really, I'll need to explain that in text with some links according to what you need to next do. So I'll put this up on the wiki, and I'll explain all of the rest of this in text. But that shows you so far where we are, shows you how to get something out of Voyager in the correct format to be imported into your VR player.